All right, we've got the breaking news that has been rumored for quite some time, I should say. It was a few weeks ago when Quebec's economy minister, Pierre Fitzgibbon, he let it slip in an interview that the largest private investment ever in Quebec's history is going to be announced in a few weeks. Well, today is the day. It's happening right now as we speak. The big announcement that Northvolt AB will build a lithium-ion battery factory just outside Montreal. Going to be in Saint-Basile-le-Grand. It's a $7 billion plant. $1.37 billion of investment is going to come from the Quebec government, but a huge private investment here. This battery factory plant will supply Volvo and BMW, among others. And they say timing is everything. So, the fact that I get to make this announcement ahead of our next guest, well, I think it's absolutely perfect. Now, could Montreal soon be edging towards regaining its spot as Canada's business capital? Montreal 2.0. The city is bustling with entrepreneurs, an early edge in AI, and a pro-business government. And I think some people would point to this announcement at Northvolt just moments ago. In 2022 alone, Montreal attracted $3.58 billion in foreign investment, an amount that created 8,000 plus new jobs with high average annual salaries of close to $90,000. Now, Joe O'Connor is a features writer for the Financial Post, and he recently penned this piece that we talked about earlier in the week. Montreal 2.0, could it challenge Toronto for Canadian economic supremacy? Joe, welcome to the show.
Elias, thanks for having me. I'm hearing you're breaking the news to me about the Northvolt announcement, and it's another timely in terms of our conversation win for Montreal on the long maybe climb back from the bad old days of the 1970s and the 80s when this your great city was dying somewhat.
Yeah, so Joe, this is the thing, right? Because everything you referenced there, I tell you, our listeners, they can't believe it. The stuff that you outlined, and this news just coming out moments ago. Make the case, Joe, to our listeners that we should be optimistic and positive about our future.
Well, I think there's a very interesting story to tell around that. And I don't know how many of your listeners have heard of Harley Finkelstein. And
he was on the show, Joe, just so you know, the guy from Shopify, the president of Shopify. He was on the show, I would say, 3-4 weeks ago, yeah. Okay.
So he's a Montrealer, as your listeners will know, and also he's pretty much the number 2 person at the most at a dominant tech company in Canada, and he's at the vanguard of this idea of, people can work from anywhere. And so he, of course, has moved home to Montreal because people can work from anywhere. And so jumping off from that perspective was this idea, in this global hunt for talent where people can do their jobs from anywhere, where you live becomes vital in that conversation. What is your most livable city? How do all that, in terms of raising a family, in terms of owning a house, in terms of quality of life? And so he sort of gets out there and says, hey, Montreal is one of those places. So I would say this to your listeners: Montreal doesn't need to be a place where Anglophones, going back into the history, and your listeners will know this more than me. I just remember watching it as a kid on CBC in 1980 and being little, but it's not a place to leave. It doesn't have to be a place to leave, but it's a magnet for people to come to, because those people, wherever they might be coming from, can sit at their desk in their Montreal apartment and build a life around that, but be working for companies from wherever. Maybe that company's in Toronto. Maybe that company's in Vancouver. Maybe it's in San Francisco, where no one can afford rent. But maybe if you're living in Montreal, you can earn a good living and also have your little laptop and do your job there. So there's that idea, that sort of portability of work and Montreal's desirability as a place to live. It's just a fantastic city. Every time I go there, I'm gobsmacked. So this is one thing it could be. It can be a draw for talent just because of what it is, Montreal. But what also is sort of ingrained, at least in the several people I interviewed, and they made this case to me. And admittedly, in making that case, it's hard to exactly put a finger on. But they said just because Montreal doesn't have that to the same degree of a Toronto anymore, the corporate presence. Sure, there's lots of companies headquartered there, but about half as many as there are headquartered in Toronto. So there's not as much of that sort of traditional, I've come out of university with my BCom, maybe I've got my MBA, and maybe I'm going to hop on the ladder at TD Bank and climb the corporate escalator, and off I go. There's not as much of that sort of obvious opportunity. So I had several entrepreneurs, established entrepreneurs in the city, make the case to me that because there isn't that obvious path, that there is this spirit of entrepreneurship that sort of pulsates in the city where, you've got to figure stuff out. You've got to start businesses. You've got to also have a government that's going to attract businesses. And now we've seen this specifically in Montreal's AI community with Joshua Bengio. And here's the very brainy academic who starts with a very small idea with huge ambitions of like, hey, I'm going to make this town an AI, not just a hub for Canada, but like a global place to be. And you know what? He's succeeding in doing that. So these are jobs that are future-facing, and jobs that typically, like the statistic you quoted in your introduction, I'm working in tech, people are walking into jobs where you're making close to, and this is a first-year person, right? You're making close to $90,000 a year. And that's a lot of money, specifically or particularly when, say, in comparison to Toronto, let's say you're saving for a house, and a house here costs $1.2 million for a dump. Well, maybe you can get some sort of home in Montreal for half that price. So I think there's a whole confluence of factors here. The portability of work, the spirit of the place, the dynamism of it, a government that's willing to write huge checks as evidenced by the Northvolt check today, and this idea of an entrepreneurial spirit that just sort of threads through the place. Like, people got to make it happen.
And Joe,
they've been making it happen.
Joe, just in the moment that we have left here, I'd love to get your perspective on just how much political decisions play into this. And I'm watching Justin Trudeau now. He's speaking at this Northvolt thing, obviously, obviously trying to get a good face on wherever he can at this moment. But so I just wonder on the political decisions, right? Because Ontario, if you go back in time 10 years, Ontario was not gung-ho on electric vehicles. Quebec was, and invested in Quebec. We invested in networks. We invested in subsidies. Ontario took a different path, and then lo and behold, today, I know they've been handing out lots of money in Ontario as well, Stellantis and Volkswagen too. But do you think that some of this success for Montreal, and maybe not as much in Toronto, has to do with political decisions?
Oh, 100%. Undeniably so. I think Montreal and Quebec recognized early on that obviously we live in the global market, right? And to attract businesses, the only way that these businesses are going to come places and set up shop, like, yes, there's a ton of private investment, it seems, behind this Northvolt decision, but $1 billion is $1 billion. And I think both at the federal level and particularly at the provincial level, in this case, Quebec has been very smart in seeing that, you know what, over time, these investments are going to pay out, and it's going to help us not slip behind the rest of the world, but get ahead for the rest of the world, particularly when we're in this transitionary moment where, like it or not, whatever we think, like, we're going green. Like, that's happening. And so why not be on the cutting edge of that? And it might be a slow process. It might not be 10 years. It might not be 15. It might not be 30. However, if you get in on the ground floor and you're writing these big checks, you're giving your city and the people who live there and people who want to work there like a fighting chance. And a lot of these jobs, if you go into they'll be the grunty jobs, like, and there's, the more like the lesser paying ones, I would think, to some extent. But a lot of these jobs are going to be high skilled. right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you become a center for something, if you become a magnet for something, then you attract talent. And once the word gets out, then I think you layer on top of that just the desirability of what Montreal offers to people.
And the word getting out, Joe. That's your piece. So important to that, Joe. Listen, we could talk forever. First off, and your timing is impeccable today to come on at this moment. Thanks so much.
Well, I really appreciate you having me, and I love your city, and I'm rooting for it, just not on the hockey side.
I want us to get a baseball team, Joe. If we get enough money, if we get wealthy enough, we can bring back a baseball team. That's what I'm pining for.
I think so, too. It breaks my heart the Expos left. You have a great day.
You too. That's Joe O'Connor, features writer with the Financial Post.